On today's show, the Capitals trade Darcy Kemper to the Kings for Pierre-Luc Dubois. What were the Capitals thinking? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about a big trade today as the Capitals finally made a big move and they trade Darcy Kemper to the Kings for Pierre-Luc Dubois. What were they thinking? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I will talk about the pros of this deal, what ultimately was in it for the Capitals. And then in the final segment, I will talk about the cons and what the Capitals should worry about with this acquisition. But just to get it going here, July 1st is coming up here soon. And we know that the closer it gets to July 1st, well, there is a whole lot more deals that take place. Why? Well, generally speaking, you don't want to wait till July 1st because then you're going to pay the Kings ransom for a player, or you're going to pay the most, or the selection isn't going to be that great. So GM Brian McClellan went out and finally did the thing that he said he was going to do for the longest time and get that top six forward. And that forward was Pierre-Luc Dubois. Was that the right decision for the Capitals? Just a knee-jerk reaction. I think to myself, what was he thinking? I've done a lot of research on him and just what kind of player he's been here historically. There's a lot to like about his game, but there's also a lot that could go wrong. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about that. The tough question that GM Brian McClellan had to make is that he saw that Nick Backstrom stepped away from hockey indefinitely. Evgeny Kuznetsov got dealt out to the Hurricanes, that there was this gaping hole at the central position, and he filled that hole with a guy that, let's just be honest, there's a lot of question marks. He is a bit of a head case, I'm going to go ahead and say, and he produced some of his worst numbers this last season. And the Capitals said, yeah, I'm all in on that. Forget about the fact that he's making a substantial amount of money and that he's been positioned all around the NHL playing on different teams, that yes, we want to have some of that action on the Capitals. We already had a player that was a bit similar to that. Maybe you've heard of him. His name is Evgeny Kuznetsov, a guy that said, I could be the best hockey player in the world if I wanted to be. I think that the Capitals, what they ended up doing is acquiring a player similar to an Evgeny Kuznetsov and Pierre-Luc Dubois. What were they thinking? So that is what we're talking about here. Is kind of an interesting move. And ultimately, I know why it happened. And I'll talk about Darcy Kemper in tomorrow's episode. The biggest reason this took place is that the Capitals have an abundance of wealth in the netminding department. And Charlie Lindgren took over the reins as the number one netminder, and they didn't want to pay Darcy Kemper all of that money to be the backup. And what's in it for the Kings? Well, time was of the essence. Dubois would have had total control of his contract with a full no-move clause kicking in 12 days from now on July 1st. And if the Stanley Cup final went to Game 7, they would have lost the right to buy him out for 1/3. This is a better circumstance for the Kings. So who won this deal? Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I think that the Kings won this deal. Talking here briefly about Darcy Kemper and what was in it for the Kings. They had a lot of problems in net, and the Capitals were willing to kick a former Stanley Cup winning netminder to the curb because he had one bad season. In a vacuum, he wasn't that great of a netminder. So he made the move that he had promised the Capitals fans and everyone else that he was going to get that top 6 forward. And he did that by getting Pierre-Luc Dubois. And this has been something that has been out there for quite a while. Rumors of potential straight swap between Dubois and Darcy Kemper first surfaced in early May, revealed by Jeff Merrick on the Sportsnet's 32 Thoughts podcast. Eventually, Dubois was traded to the Los Angeles King by the Winnipeg Jets just before the 2023 NHL draft. As a part of the deal, the 25-year-old center who was selected 3rd overall inked an 8-year, $68 million extension, tying him to the Kings until 2030-2031. That is really pushing your chips all in on a player that has had a questionable past. During the 22-23 season, Dubois enjoyed a career high of 63 points with the Jets. However, despite his successful stint with the team, he declined to commit long-term, much like his time with the Blue Jackets, which ended after he requested a trade and was subsequently benched by then coach John Tortorella. They're really hoping that Spencer Carberry can be this snake whisperer, that he can be this guy that can really speak these players into existence, because that is what he's going to have to do with Pierre-Luc Dubois. A bit of a risk, a bit of a gamble for a team that, the Capitals are looking for an identity. They saw some big players. They see that 2018 Rock the Red era slowly peeling away. You see Nick Backstrom stepping away from hockey indefinitely. You see TJ Oshie's future in question. They were looking for answers before July 1st and before the first game took place in the fall. Dubois' new contract includes a no-move clause, granting him full protection until the 27-28 season, a 15 no-trade team list in 28-29, and a 10-team no-trade list from 29-30 to 30-31. I talk about GM Brian McClellan pushing his chips all in on this player, and in a lot of ways putting his career at stake. If this whole thing is a bust, I think that Mac might be looking for a job as well. Following the trade to the Kings, general manager Rob Blake expressed that Dubois didn't fit well with the team system, and they take responsibility for not integrating him properly into the right roles. However, Dubois remains unfazed, stating that he believes everything happens for a reason and is focused on having a productive summer. So quite the move for the Capitals. I think, again, the Kings walk away as the winner, not to mention that he is not the guy that is a guy that gets along with a lot of the other guys in the locker room. So if there's one thing you know about the Capitals, it is a close-knit group. And then you're inserting this guy that's a bit volatile, kind of like Evgeny Kuznetsov was to a certain extent. But Brian McClellan, he was hyped about it. The Capitals GM expressed his excitement about adding Pierre-Luc Dubois to the organization, emphasizing the 25-year-old's potential to become a top-tier center in the NHL. McClellan remains confident that Dubois' skill, size, exceptional skating, and high hockey IQ will allow him to thrive in the Cap system with increased responsibilities and opportunities. I've been to this movie before. I've seen it. I heard that Spencer Carberry was going to be able to turn around Evgeny Kuznetsov's career, that all we need is the right head coach in here and that they're going to change him. Is he going to be able to do that with Pierre-Luc Dubois? Maybe. There's a lot of knocks to his game that if things don't go his way, that he pitches a fit and kind of just mails it in or gets benched. That is the kind of player that the Capitals are adding to this team. I'm kind of just in disbelief right now that they made a bold move like this, and I was hoping for something bigger. And maybe I think that GM Brian McClellan probably did go out and try to attain a bigger name out there, and that's what was there. And I think that the Kings, they were in a hurry to offload him off the team as quickly as possible, and they found a dance partner with the Capitals. And guess what? Darcy Kemper is going to be the guy to help fill the hole in net for the Kings. Again, I see what was in it for the Kings. Not so sure about what's in it for the Capitals. So interesting time for the Caps. This was the big move. This was the thing that was supposed to make the team better. There's more questions now than there are answers about what the identity of the Capitals will be in the fall. How will he fully integrate into this system? I think that there had to be better options, maybe even better internal options. I think at the end of the day, what this was all about was that Alex Ovechkin going out there and saying, I didn't have chemistry with Strome. I didn't have chemistry with these lines that continued to change game after game after game. That Brian McClellan threw a Hail Mary pass, hoping that Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be the guy that's going to bring it home for a touchdown. Color me skeptical. I'd like to be wrong in this situation, but as of right now, I cannot believe this deal. There had to be something better, someone better out there. I guess it remains to be seen how this all shakes out in the fall, but not the best move, in my opinion, for the Capitals on a guy that's a maybe at the end of the day. Let's hope that he can prove us all wrong and really take this team to the next level. All right, so coming up here after the break, I'm going to talk about the pros. What are some of the biggest attributes to Dubois' game? It's not all bad. Historically, he has been a good player. What are some of those key attributes? I'll discuss straight ahead. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And let me tell you something, guys. Life is busy. I know that sometimes you're thinking, I should get the tickets to the Nationals game, and then life gets busy and you forget about it. Well, fear not with GameTime, as tickets actually get cheaper the closer to first pitch. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED. NHL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team. It is every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's talk about the pros. What kind of player did the Capitals get in Pierre-Luc Dubois? I'm going to talk about the pros in this segment. What kind of player, if he plays up to his full potential, will they ultimately be getting here? So Pierre-Luc Dubois could bring an upgrade at the center over Dylan Strome and Henrik Slop here for the Caps, potentially providing them with another playmaker for Alex Ovechkin and improving their center depth if all goes as planned. So what is Dubois' skill set and potential? Where does he fit into the master plan? Dubois is described as a big, versatile forward with impressive playmaking ability, speed, and skating ability. At 25 years old, he has the potential to become a top player with the right systems and opportunity. This is my statement if I was a PR writer for the Capitals, cherry picking the best of the best about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Impact of coaching and team environment. If there is a coach that is going to be able to get the most out of Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think it's going to be a coach like Spencer Carberry, but he is going to have his work cut out for him. The hope is that Dubois will be motivated by playing alongside Alex Ovechkin and under the guidance of forward-thinking coaches on the team. The trusted atmosphere and resources within the team could help Dubois grow his game. Again, that is the hope, being that the Capitals pushed all their chips in on this guy, is that he will thrive under the likes of Alex Ovechkin. Off-ice attributes, Dubois is noted for his good rapport with the media, his positive impact on teammates, and his tribute to late teammates by wearing number 80, late teammates number 80. So his experience, his previous seasons, what did the Capitals see? What is in the perceived secret sauce of Pierre-Luc Dubois that GM Brian McClellan was drinking, by no doubt? After a challenging season with the LA Kings, it's mentioned that Dubois faced difficulties adapting to a new system playing style. However, there is optimism regarding his potential impact with the Capitals, as historically he has thrived in better environments. Maybe the Kings, maybe that was the big thing. Even though we heard about the struggles on other teams that he's played with, maybe it was just him not meshing with the LA Kings. Maybe this change of scenery to the district will be exactly what the doctor ordered. And there is excitement for a fresh start in Washington, as Pierre-Luc Dubois was quick to brush his shoulders off and said kind of like, whatever, on to the next one. I'm ready for the next challenge. And what keeps happening is these teams keep backing up the Brinks truck back into him, paying him a substantial amount of money, with the hope, with the prayer that he will be a player of his former glory, of his younger day. So the excitement for that fresh start. It's noted that Dubois is excited for a fresh start in Washington, where he turns 26 years old and is expected to be a first-line center. That's where we're at, Capitals fans, right now, is that this is the guy that's going to fill the role for Backstrom or Kuznetsov, because evidently Strome was not the guy to get it done. So what does that mean? That means that Strome will most likely get put down to second line center. Is this the right idea? That's the big question. The Capitals made a big, bold move. I think that Brian McClellan is the gambler. He likes to gamble. I think he likes to listen to The Gambler by Kenny Rogers. He must, if he's making moves like this. Will this pay off? If you can just take a look at the positive attributes in a vacuum, he looks like a good player. If you are willing to overlook all the negative that could potentially be there about Pierre-Luc Dubois, it could be good. What did GM Brian McClellan do? He cherry-picked some of the best data on him, that he has the potential of being a really great player. That's the hope, though, that he's going to be able to do that. That is being definitely a glass half full kind of person, to think that Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be that kind of guy. That's the hope, that he is going to be able to relive his former glory. It's going to be a tough thing. How he's going to integrate in with his team. I hope that he is ambitious. I hope he hits the ground running. And, it wouldn't be the first time that I'm wrong, but I think the Capitals are going to have their work cut out. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to have his work cut out. I guess it remains to be seen. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about the biggest negative aspects of his game, or the cons of his game, if you will. What were the Capitals thinking, and what are some of the most worrisome things to consider when thinking about Pierre-Luc Dubois on the Capitals? I'll discuss straight ahead. Hey, Locked On Capitals fan. I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Capitals better than the current GM, Brian McClellan? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead it to the glory. Hire the right coaching staff, trade players, or draft picks. Navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Caps fan, you know there is no off season. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you are going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go, as you want and when you want to. By the way, Locked On Network listeners can get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the to download the game, just visit hockeygm.app. That's hockeygm.app, or look it up on the App Store. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, a big trade that took place, and it isn't too surprising. This has been speculated about for some time, that there was the possibility that the Kings and the Capitals would want to swap, that they would get Darcy Kemper and we would get Pierre-Luc Dubois. Crazy talk for the longest time, but it came true today as the Capitals made that big trade. So in the previous segment, I talked about the best case scenario for Pierre-Luc Dubois on this team. In this segment, there's the negativity, there's the causes of concern, and that is what we will talk about here next here. So a player performance, Dubois, who will turn 26 on June 24th, had the worst season of his career with just 16 goals and 24 assists for 40 points in 81 games. Along with just 1 goal in 5 games in the playoffs, he currently has 7 years left on an 8-year contract with an $8.5 million cap hit. That is crazy. That is a lot of money to a guy that hasn't lived up to the kind of player that many people perceive. His contract and salary, Dubois cap hit, is the 3rd highest on the caps behind Alex Ovechkin at $9.5 million and Nick Backstrom at $9.2. That's the big thing for me. When you're making that kind of money, I want to feel excited with a new addition. I don't necessarily have that excitement that I would have had if it had been another big name player. So the risk and his consistency, the big causes of concern. The acquisition of Dubois represents a risk for the Capitals, who are taking on a contract with a lot of term and money remaining, as well as a player who has a reputation for being inconsistent. Consistency. That is the tough part. Dubois has struggled with inconsistency, and at times his effort has been questioned. Ultimately, why John Tortorella benched him at one point. That if things don't go his way, he's going to pitch a fit. So what's the reputation? What's the noise? Why is everyone so concerned about Pierre-Luc Dubois? Dubois and his share had his share of struggles, including a benching from ex-head coach John Tortorella and reports about the Jets' toxic dressing room. There were also comments from Drew Doughty that raised questions about Dubois' dynamic with the team. I think the Kings were really happy that he was gone, that he is gone, and he's no longer going to be playing on this team. They're the better. They got Darcy Kemper, former Stanley Cup winner, on their team. So Dubois' tenure with different teams, Dubois' tenure with the Blue Jackets turned ugly, and his time in Winnipeg and Los Angeles was also turbulent. He hasn't come close to expectations and has been negative defensively relative to his teammates. So again, there is a lot of risk, and I'm hoping some reward in this signing. The financial concerns, that is the biggest thing. You know, like I talked about, if you are getting a big name player, you're hoping like, wow, that was a lot of money, but it was worth it because we got this big name. I think that it's important to temper expectations with Pierre-Luc Dubois. The financial concerns, it's hard to see Dubois rebounding enough to be worth his hefty 8-year contract, carrying an $8.5 million cap hit, and management likely felt pressure building to make a decision before a no movement clause takes place on July 1st. There is no doubt. And I think that the Kings were getting desperate. What are we going to do? We don't want to buy this guy out of here. We want to get him out of here fair and square. And they did that. And quite a gamble. And I don't know what other options Brian McClellan had. Maybe this was the only option that was left. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about, Capitals fans, is that Brian McClellan did not want to mortgage the farm to get that shiny toy, that big name player that's out there. He didn't want to go out and get that Jake Gensel. He didn't want to do it. Or, you know, maybe something will happen in that regard. Maybe on July 1st, he will go out and make other big additions. But my fear is that he knocked on a lot of doors. He kicked a lot of tires around the NHL, and this is what rose to the surface. The Capitals wanted out of Darcy Kemper. They wanted that top 6 forward. This was the answer. I'm not so sure that Darcy Kemper being out of here was the right idea. That'll be the topic of tomorrow's show. But as far as I know, there is a lot of cause of concern about adding him on this team. I understand why he did it. I understand that he wanted to do it so he could try to find that center that will have magic with Alex Ovechkin. Is that a pipe dream? Is that a fever dream? It's kind of too early to tell, but I am very skeptical about this whole deal and how this will play out in the fall. Again, that's the biggest thing, is that this is all that was left. This is what we're going to get. Last summer, it was Pacioretty and it was Edmondson. This year, it is Pierre-Luc Dubois. Is this deal going to age like a carton of milk? Or is this something that will say a stroke of genius? Wow, I can't believe this happened. That's an ambitious dream. That's an ambitious goal. I really hope that is the case. But as of right now, it is going to be difficult to see a situation where Pierre-Luc Dubois struggled in most every environment that he's played in, that he's going to come to the Capitals and by some stroke of amazement and genius, he's just going to have a great rapport. He's going to find his former glory and say, hey, look at what I did. I'm really worth all this money. I'd like to live in that world, and I'd love to get drunk on that Capitals Kool-Aid with you, but I, at this point, just really don't think it's possible. I hope that there's something bigger looming on July 1st, that, like Brian McClellan's going to go out and get that upper echelon player that's going to really take this team to the next level. Because as it stands right now, after this deal, I'm not feeling too optimistic about it, and hopefully this deal proves me wrong and the Capitals will be in a good position. But as of right now, kind of tough and kind of a sour taste in my mouth as a Capitals fan. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. Join me tomorrow on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Capitals as I will talk about Darcy Kemper and why the Capitals moved him and what kind of goaltender are the Kings getting. Make sure and tune into that episode. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.